Hey guys, this is just gonna be an off-the-cuff video I've been meaning to make. Just me sharing some of my random thoughts about my MFA program. Maybe I'll make this into a series, see how well this video does. So in this video, I'm just gonna be talking about my experiences with workshopping. I'm taking a fiction workshop now because I'm in the fiction track. So far I've submitted 2 of my pieces for critique in workshop. I went into my program with about 80 or 90 pages of a novel, so I thought, okay, I'm good. I don't have to actually do any new writing while I'm here. And that turned out to be wrong because for my first submission, I submitted the first 2 chapters of my novel, and I realized just how bad it was. Um, they told me that there was too much going on in this chapter, that the character was not very likable. One person actually said in their comments that she is an asshole and what they were doing doesn't make any sense. The story doesn't really get good until chapter 2 because that's when the character finally starts to want something, and the character needs to want something for your story to work. Though I don't believe that's necessarily true, but whatever. So that was as nerve-wracking as that was to hear, and as frustrating because while I was sitting there in the workshop, I was not allowed to speak, and I was like bursting out of my skin wanting to comment. Yeah, and that's something you need to be ready for if you want to be a part of a workshop or an MFA program. You need to have a thick skin and be open to criticism because you do kind of see your work as your baby and you don't want people criticizing it, but at the same time you have to acknowledge and you have to remind yourself that you're there because you want to get better as a writer, and you have to absorb it, and you have to have humility. It is a very humbling experience, and you have to have maturity, and you have to be self-aware, and you have to realize that you do not, your first draft of your shitty novel that you're not even really sure how it's ending, that does not deserve a Pulitzer or a Nobel Prize. So you have to understand that they are there, that that your students and your professor is there to help you, so you have to listen to what you're saying. So the very next day after that workshop, I just immediately started rewriting the first chapter. I completely changed everything. There was one person who made comments that my character doesn't have a job and they're mooching off of people, so I gave them a job, I gave them their own place to live, I made them more likable. I just completely changed the premise of the story, and that can be scary for you, especially if you're like 80 or 90 pages into your first draft. It's a first draft for a reason. A first draft. You're going to write more, and you also can't really be afraid to change things. You have to be flexible. You have to, because you can't have an ego. You have to be willing to play the long game, and you have to, you have this image of your novel as a completed product in your head, and you can't be married to that image. And so now I've just completely changed. I wouldn't say completely changed, but I've changed a big chunk of what I want the novel to be. And yeah, so I just rewrote the first chapter and I submitted that 2 weeks ago, and that was the response to that was much more positive. Not that it was perfect, but there were still things that they pointed out. So now I'm just kind of moving forward. I've been rewriting. I'm writing a new version of chapter 2, which is completely different than the chapter 2 I had written previously. And I changed my character's relationship to her family because the relationship she has to her family is a big part of the novel. I made it less toxic because, after those workshops, I've realized that the story I had was a little outlandish, that it was extremely difficult to like the characters, and your characters need to be likable or they need to be sympathetic. They don't need to be perfect Mary Sue's, but there has to be something the reader can identify with. There has to be something the reader can like about them and sympathize and empathize with them over. So I changed that. My main character, she was originally going to be very resentful of her parents, of her mother specifically, but I changed that. I gave her and her mother a better relationship, which I think hopefully going forward will be more successful readers, will make her more likable. I'm also sort of changing her career trajectory because my main character wants to be an artist. That's her goal. And, she's experiencing some success, and it's either going to be about, going forward, it's going to be either about how she responds to that success, or she hasn't achieved success yet, and she has to experience a tragedy, and she has to absorb that to use that as raw material to make her art better, and it's going to affect her relationships, and she's going to have to make choices about her relationship to art, and it's going to, and her relationships to people. And I say in the first chapter, she has this internal monologue: the things that make you a good artist don't necessarily make you a good person. And I realized that that was the kind of thing I needed in my first draft that I didn't have. I needed that introspection, and I needed a clearer vision of what my character's goals were, and now I have that more or less, and it's clear what the character wants, and it's clear about, or a more, I guess I should say, a more clear idea of what my character wants and the sacrifices they're going to make and the journey they're going to go through. And I think, after working on this novel for a few years, 6 or 7 years, 5 or 6 years, I finally have some traction with where I want to go, and I finally have a story that feels believable and realistic and compelling. So, as frustrating as it is to hear those comments, to hear people criticize your work, to say negative things about the thing you've spent years sacrificing on, it's something you need, and that's something that I'm glad I've gotten that out of the way, because I'm prepared for this going forward. Okay, yeah, so those were just my thoughts on this, my thoughts on responding to criticism of your work, just me rambling. I felt like I was more articulate in this video than in other videos, ironically, but I'll see what you guys think. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. And I realize I'm not on a regular schedule with my submissions to this channel, but I'm working on that. So, have a good day.